Thanks. I'm very honored to be here. Thanks, Rolf. The light's a little strong. It's like, you're trying to make me speak. I say the truth, don't worry. As you will see. Before the conversation with Rolf, and of course I will thank Rolf for his help with writing The Black Swan. He read my manuscript and gave me, usually I don't listen to advice, but I listen to his advice. I don't know, maybe listening to you, if I didn't listen to you, I would have done a lot better, right? One never knows. I don't know the counterfactual, but still I listened a lot, so I owe you a big. So thanks, I'm honored to be here. But before sitting down for the conversation, I realized that I have a lot of graphs to show, and there are things I cannot express in words. While writing, you realize that you need the graph. So I'm going to show the graphs, and then we'll sit down and we'll talk about them. It's much better. So what I will do here is not the presentation, it's just showing you the graphs. There was no definition of fragility. I could not define, actually, there's no definition of risk by economists, but economists don't count. So there's, so no definition, real definition of risk, probabilistic, you need the model, stuff like that. Fragility is vastly easier to define. And vastly more important, it's not predictive. I'm interested in non-predictive systems. And it hit me that there's a universal definition of fragility. All of a sudden, that I had as a trader, but didn't realize I had it. Like I was speaking prose without knowing, okay? And it's as follows. Very simply, take the story of the king who had a very, I would say, interesting son, who was son of a king, right? You know how they behave. And the son violated a certain law, and when you violate the law, you have to be crushed with a big stone. That was the law, right? So the king that couldn't get out of, he wanted to get out of it, but he couldn't. He's a king, and kings have to abide by the law and give the example. And someone gave him a piece of advice. What do you think it was? Sorry? Crush the big stone into small pebbles, and then spend 2 or 3 afternoons pelting the sun with the pebbles. And of course, we have now a definition of fragility. Is fragile what has this shape? This is harm, okay? Harm is negative, and this is a side of stone. Every incremental kilogram in the side of the stone hurts you more than a previous one. If I drive my car against a wall at 1/10 of a kilometer per hour 1,000 times, I'm going to be hurt a lot less than if I drive it once against a wall at at 100 kilometers per hour, no? Same, if I jump from 100 meters, even in Switzerland, people die, no? They say a lot of things. Once, but if I jump 1,000,000 times a nano unit, okay, 100th of a millimeter, I won't get hurt, you see? So therefore, very simple definition of fragility is you have a variable, size of stone, you have harm, it has to have an increase. It means this is the shape of it. It is concave. More on that later during the conversation, but let me tell you why this is relevant. If your exposure is linear, you see, this is the event size, this is harm. If the exposure is linear, you're not hurt that much by a large event. But there's something, if you're fragile, you're disproportionately harmed by a large event. It's very disproportionate, and this difference is monstrous. In other words, we are in a nonlinear. And look at the difference when a black swan event, when a large deviation happens, you're hurt a lot more. Now we have a definition of what's fragile, what's not. Let's see how we can apply it. This is convex, and this is concave, and this, I guess, same word in Switzerland. You usually use different things, but okay. And the convex, this is how you can identify. See the convex and the concave. Convex is what is not hurt, and we're going to see may benefit from things, from harm. Concave is what's fragile. As we saw, the stone was concave. This is concave. For a given move, you have more pain than gain. Okay? Look at it. This is the shape. And the other one, you have more gain than pain. The convex. So with this, it takes a while. It's going to seep in. Hopefully in a conversation, we'll have a little debate, which will make me provide more illustrations. But with this, we could do a lot of things. This is number of cars, and this is time. Travel cost is negative. How long it takes me, say, to drive to the airport. Take New York City. if there's 100,000 cars in New York, 90,000 cars in New York City, it takes me 32.5 minutes to drive to the terminal, okay? Park my car at the terminal. You increase the number of cars to 90,000, same thing, okay? 33 minutes now. You increase the cars by more than 15%, no effect, no serious effect. You increase the number of cars a little more, what happens? Now it takes an hour. You see, you have accelerating harm. And this applies to anything, cars in cities, airline traffic. I don't know if someone is involved here who helped build Heathrow, but they completely misunderstood the notion of fragility. They're here, okay? If someone sneezes and somewhere, okay, then you have people this is why you didn't come from Heathrow, Matt, no? People lying on the floor, just like have you seen the movie Dr. Zhivago? People spend 2-3 weeks lying on the floor of the train station. Same thing with Heathrow, we're back there, okay? It's because that's called an over-optimized system. An over-optimized system is getting to the point of accelerating nonlinearity. So this is what fragile system, over-leveraged give you that. So now we have enough graphs, but I'm going to give you another example about the too big to fail, why a large stone harms more than small pebbles in the economy. A very simple example. You recognize a gentleman here, his name is Kerviel. He did a lot better than you guys. He's a rogue trader, and you guys tried with UBS in London, you didn't come close, all right? He did a lot better. He lost $4 billion. How much did the UBS guy lose? 4 billion euros? 2 billion euros. He did a lot better. So let's take his case, because he still has a record. Why did they lose so much money? Very simple. They woke up and discovered 50 billion euros in a drawer. Okay? To liquidate 50 billion euros automatically, and they had to do it the French way. The French way means you have one person on a phone and 12 people telling him what to do. But still, they have to liquidate immediately 50 billion euros. It cost them, the guy did not lose much money. He wasn't really a big league, nothing close to you guys, all right, at the time before liquidation. The liquidation cost 4 billion euros. You see? So liquidating for 50 billion was a very simple curve. Do you recognize the curve here? Same as with a car, same as anything. You want to liquidate 50 billion euros, it costs you a lot, okay, in dollars. If you liquidate small, so instead of having a large bank, you had 10 small banks, okay? We call them micro Société Générale. I mean, they're capable of having names like that, okay? Micro Société Générale 1, micro Société Générale 2, whatever. So, and each one of them would go bust serially, you see what I mean? Not at the same time. And so each one you'd have to liquidate 5 billion euros. If anyone here is in the markets, could tell me what do you think it would cost to liquidate 5 billion euros? How much? Close to zero. If you have coffee, you give the trader coffee, all right? And you tell him to take his time. A couple of hours, zero costs. So you see the effective size, nonlinearity is coming from size. That, in a nutshell, explains why companies don't survive. Large corporations don't survive. You get large, you exit the gene pool. On paper, you have something called economies of scale. It doesn't seem to work in practice. That's the reason. When you have a big problem, you are harmed disproportionately more. And that's the curve, the same concave curve. I guess with this, we can start a conversation, no? So now I've illustrated. It would have been impossible to do it verbally. I'll keep these things here. All right, thank you. Thanks for listening.
So, I have to ask you that question before, because you are famous for that. 2006, 2007, the run-up to the financial crisis.
Yeah.
You saw that coming. Why did you see it coming? Why didn't the other guys see it coming?
Let me make a correction. You said the most sold non-fiction book. No, the most sold essay is very different. Non-fiction book can include journalistic stuff like, I don't know, some porno, the biography of a porno star or something. An essay
I don't know of any
more,
biography of a porn star that sold that many.
No, whatever. But I'm saying is that you can have...
And I've read them all.
Okay. All right. The question is very simple. Let me give you a little background of why I knew the banking system was sitting on dynamite. There are a lot of metrics you can look at, but one day in 2003, and came into my office a journalist from the New York Times with the risk reports stolen from Fannie Mae by some defector, and he wanted to make sense of it. I saw it, and I turned pale. You see this? Sorry, can we get back the stuff? All right. So I'm going to show you the graph. It's very similar to the one we saw with traffic, car traffic. They were extremely concave. The exposure was accelerating to interest rates and other variables. Like if interest rates go up, say 1%, if interest rates say go up 1%, very similar to this one. Interest rates go up 1%, they make they make 10 million. Okay, if the thing goes up another percent, they lose 5 billion. You see, it's very nonlinear. It was accelerating in a very rapid way. So you realize the smallest error, when you have that kind of exposure, the smallest error blows you up. This shape, when you're concave, it means that volatility harms you. And this is very simple. You're fragile. Anything fragile, there are 5 or 6 things that harm you. Stressors harm you if you're fragile. This cup, you know, the coffee cup. No, this is robust. I don't know if you can do an experiment, but or you take my word. If you take a coffee cup, okay, and subject it to volatility, it's not going to be helped. No? Okay, so what is fragile, doesn't like volatility, is concave with respect to random variables, and doesn't like stressors. Okay, has a distribution in probability space, has skewness. Okay, and has more, any event that happen has more harm than benefit. So all these characteristics are, they lump together, they have the same phenomenology, although they look different, or they're theoretically different, they have the same phenomenology, they hurt you. Like for example, take flying time for a plane. Any disturbance, any volatility is likely to extend your travel time. So when you cross the Atlantic, you can land 8 hours late, 10 hours late, you can't land 10 hours early, you see? Even in Switzerland, you guys are known for being good, but not that good, all right? You can't land 2 weeks early, but if a volcano acts, you know, you can land 2 weeks late. You get the idea. So disturbances harm you one way. So something fragile is a system that when you put the smallest disturbance, it's likely to hurt it more than to help it. And something very, very fragile, okay, is something that looks stable, but can break at the first large deviation, which happened with the banking system. So then I became obsessed with the fragility of the banking system. Mm-hmm. And so this is what happened. And then I kept shouting, and people were telling me, no, Bernanke said it's a great moderation. No, you idiot, you don't know anything. The world is complicated, too complicated for you. And of course, they blew up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's the story, yeah. And now let's turn this. So we have the fragility. You get harmed by. Can you keep this? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's keep the slides going. You get harmed. You get harmed by volatility, by randomness, exactly. by changing the environment, and the opposite of that you call that anti-fragility.
I looked in every language. You have two. You know, you have a convex and a concave. You have systems that benefit from volatility. And they don't have a taxonomy. Nobody gave them a name. When you ask people what's the opposite of fragile, if you ask a person who doesn't know the word antifragility in Swiss German, what's the opposite of fragile? Solid. Solid. That's not the opposite of fragile. Now, if I have a package and it's fragile, okay, you write on it, please handle with care. Something solid, you don't say this is solid, I don't care, you know, you don't say that, all right? You could, but it's not, no, something, so the fragile, volatility hurts it. At best, it will come back unchanged. The opposite would be something on which you would write, please mishandle. Volatility benefits me. And this is something, there's half of life has these characteristics.
For example?
For example, take your bones. If you subject your bones to stress, okay, they get stronger. I looked at Switzerland as a political system. It works beautifully because the bottom-up system has a lot of noise at the water fountain level. People hate each other, I'm sure, locally. But it filters up to something very stable up top. Political life likes volatility. It's a lot better than having a dictatorship. Another thing, you go to the gym, okay? Your muscles want some stressor, okay? A lot of phenomena like volatility. We're going to have a gentleman here who is going to show a system that becomes stable because you inject. I call them phylostochastic systems. They like volatility. There's a lot of things love volatility. Matt Ridley's ideas about things that love volatility. Volatility is proportional to time and information.
Are there businesses that gain from volatility?
I mean,
except for options trader?
No, there are a lot of businesses that gain from volatility. There's a James Bond movie. I mean, businesses are classified into fragile, of course, robust. Robust is unharmed, and anti-fragile, gains from volatility of others. There's a country that gains from volatility of other places, and we're there now. There's that James Bond movie of a gentleman in Hamburg who creates revolutions because revolution will make him sell more papers. Because he's hurt if there's no volatility in the globe, you remember? Okay, he's long volatility. So an option trader would immediately say he's long volatility. So there are a lot of things, when you think about it, gold benefits from the Swiss franc. You guys, I mean, benefit whenever there's turmoil elsewhere. So you are anti-fragile, right? Mm-hmm. You're not robust. I mean, robust is probably, I don't know, maybe some neighborhood in Paris is robust, but you guys are more than robust. It's like, please mishandle, the rest of the world. So no, to some extent. But I'm saying that a lot of evolution likes volatility, and I'm glad Matt Ridley is here because evolution likes randomness. Otherwise, you don't have selection. If you have perfectly stable environment, 10 offspring will survive. Okay, whereas you put some randomness, the genes like, the gene is anti-fragile to noise up to some point, of course. So it has local convexity. There's another mechanism I wanted to describe here called hormesis. Okay. The hormesis, which is improperly usually drawn, the bottom graph is, there's anything you take in your system, and discovered one thing is that the notion of redundancy in nature is a lot more widespread than I thought initially. You think that we have two kidneys, that's a form of redundancy, but in a way there's redundancy. When you get a stressor, your body takes the information and overreacts by adding to it. Like if I lift 100 kilos, my body prepares for a stressor of 105 kilos next time. So this is hormesis, and it looks like almost anything you have in small quantities, including radiation, makes your body overreact. So this is hormesis, and it looks like we find it in a lot of even cigarettes. If you smoke one cigarette every, 72 days or something like that, you're better off than smoking none. A little bit of a poisonous substance can we know from a lot of experiments and from a lot of observational studies as well, that a little bit of a stressor. Like for example, there's one thing where people don't talk about antifragility. In psychology, we have psychologists here, people talk about post-traumatic syndrome. No? Nobody talks about post-traumatic growth. Some people benefit from post-traumatic growth.
Okay.
Yeah, and innovation is a post-traumatic growth type of event. Nobody talks about it. There's no word for it. Like there was no word for blue, all right? And in the Iliad, there's no word for blue. And the ancients didn't have words for blue. They were not biologically colorblind, didn't have a word for it, so they didn't use it. And like antifragility, there's no word for it in any language. Mm-hmm. There is, in the Greek mythology, we have actually taxonomy, but no word for it. In Greek mythology, the fragile is Damocles. At best, the sword won't fall on you. The robust is Hydra. Robust is Phoenix. You shoot it, it comes back. All right, it will always come back. But the anti-fragile is like Hydra. You cut one head, it likes harm. You cut one head, two grow back. This is, it's in the mythology. There's no name for Hydra-like something or something phylostochastic.
Yeah. So what does that mean for ethics? How should we behave? How should we organize ourselves as society? How should we as individuals behave if you have that
Okay, it's very simple. If you take fragility being traded off, there are a class of people who have skin in the game, people with no skin in the game. In other words, take the bankers in the States, they have the upside, no downside. We have the downside for them. They are long volatility, we pay for the option. They are long the option, we short it. So I tried to make a tableau of ethics of people with skin in the game, citizens, artisans, entrepreneurs, and artisan, and we saw one who makes violin. He has his soul in that product. He has his ego in it, you see. So when they sell you, when artisans sell you a product, like the only artisan who worked at industrial scale was Steve Jobs. You know, he was like cabinet makers. They make sure the inside looks good, not just the outside. Not like when you go to buy something commercially made, only the outside looks good, not the inside. So some people have skin in the game, all right? Some people don't have skin in the game. Like, for example, an entrepreneur has skin in the game.
Skin in the game, just to clarify, that means you lose when you make a mistake. When you fuck up, you lose.
You take the upside and you have the downside, all right? The first column is, I have the upside, someone else has the downside. Okay, this is the banker, someone else has the downside. So this is a banker's, corporate executive. In America, the stock market lost close to $5 trillion because, you know, it kept going down and people kept buying. Citizens paid for it. Corporate executives made close to $400 billion in compensation over the period, okay? Because they had the free option, they had the upside, so they gained from volatility in a way. The journalists, politicians versus activists. This is why when you work at a municipal level, the politician has a skin in the game. When you move to Washington, D.C., it's just a number. Here, you meet your victims on a daily basis, so you can't make mistakes. So you have some kind of biological shame or skin in the game. And now there's a category of people who have soul in the game or skin in the game for the sake of others. They take the downside of society voluntarily, and without these, society can function. The reverse sort of bankers, so I have the saints, the knights, the warriors, the soldiers, saints twice. Profit, expensive talk. This is cheap talk here, no talk, expensive talk. And you have prophets, they have soul in the game. Mavericks, people who take risks for their ideas. And society gives an immense respect here. In the past, these people here were on top. A hero, someone who risks his life for others, whether in a mafia in a small neighborhood in New York, in Brooklyn, or in society, this person was on top. I'm risking my life, for you, peasant, therefore I have higher status. That was the knight, okay? And of course, these people here are no longer as powerful as the people all the way on the left. Think about it, the President of the United States, he's commander-in-chief, so he's supposed to go like Napoleon to the front, okay? Now now they're playing video games. They're not exposed to any downside for their actions. And that changed society dramatically. So modernity, we're living in a world that has a lot more power to the people on the left, people who are anti-fragile at the expense of society, and it's a problem. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about over-optimized systems. What you said, what you said before. I mean, Matt was talking about David Ricardo, and David Ricardo says you should specialize. So one country only does wine, and the other country only does cheese, and then the third country only makes axes. But doesn't that fragilize
I agree with everything.
The world?
I agree with everything Matt says overall, except for one point. I agree with David Ricardo's rule within Zurich. But if you follow the rule at a country level, which is why I don't like globalization too much, you can show it fragilizes, like any over-optimized system. After David Ricardo was 1830s, something like that, the idea started to spread. Then you had 25 years later an event, the Irish potato famine. Okay, that was purely optimized system. You go one crop, monocrop, okay? Monocrop makes you very concave. You see, think about the wine and David Ricardo, retake it and do what I do with second order effects. Think that there's a fatwa on wine in Switzerland, all right? Okay, you guys decide suddenly that you don't want wine. Don't laugh, it happened in the United States, all right? Mm-hmm. So there's a fatwa on wine, no wine, okay? Your specialization, all right, now is the reverse of what should have done. So this is why the naive, anything you take in economics textbook that has been written since Ricardo proposes naive optimization, and anything you do to follow them blows you up. Ireland lost about 2.5 million people, 1.5 million to the cemetery and 1 million to America, which is probably the same thing, or whatever you want to say. So you realize that the overall, system, so it's a big tragedy, okay? And they kept teaching Ricardo without showing That's the second order effects.
There's a danger. There's
yeah,
a risk
it's a danger
involved.
if you over specialize in anything. Computer chips, okay, and the price of computer chips collapses. What happens to you? It's not just the Irish potato famine. It's not anecdotal. You take every single monoculture tribe that had monoculture in the Americas and see that they've disappeared. They're off the map. You can't even find them. You know, nothing about their civilization. So you realize. Optimized system. Yeah.
Is that the reason why we don't see companies that have, I mean, we see companies that have 1 million employees, but that's why you don't see companies that have 10 million employees or 100 million employees. Is that why? Because they become so fragile to external shocks that they go bust?
It's the same. It's probably the same. I can make the analogy in biology, but I may make a mistake, so I need correction. But outside, I mean, at dinner. You say that you collect animals as pets, all right? You have a dog or a rat or something like that. There is a water shortage. You don't overpay for water, no? But if you have elephants as pets, and there's a water shortage here in Switzerland, it stops the rain, okay, global warming, blah, 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 all right? What do you have to pay up for the price of so you have nonlinearity, very severe nonlinearities. So it looks like the reason you don't have big animals, although it's more efficient. There's a gentleman who does cities, like this guy this morning, but another guy, who does cities and shown how convex it is, how cheaper it is to have big city. And he didn't realize that and he was making the analogy to elephants are a lot more efficient than rats. Okay, they sleep 4 hours, rats sleep 20 hours. So the whole thing, and then when you look at it that way, and you start extrapolating, you realize that there got to be, aside from size of the animal, another thing, it's a statistical distribution of the event is such that you're a lot more a prey to shortages when you're a large corporation or an elephant than when you're small. Okay, so it is a statistical diseconomy of scale that's not in literature. You see, the story of SocGen, for example, would not have happened to a smaller firm. It's the same thing. A squeeze is much more costly when you are large. But we see numbers. I'm an empiricist. I like numbers. We've taken numbers for the last 50 years. We've had papers since 1978. So the last 40 years, we've had papers showing why mergers in America have not worked. Okay, on balance. But yet, when you merge, you see immediate gains, synergy. They gave it strange business school names or other charlatanism, but it doesn't show in a number. Synergies, economies of scale, economies of scale, this, that. Okay, it doesn't show in the numbers. Why aren't they more successful? So it could be that size is a problem.
Matt, you had a question.
I just want to come back to you on finance for a second. The Irish specialised but didn't exchange. In other words, the problem was they were cut off from world trade, probably because of British policy. Excuse the Brits, but they specialised in potatoes for self-sufficiency. When you get specialisation and exchange and trade, then you actually reduce the risk.
No, he's right.
Having travels all over the world, and none of them cause a problem. Some of them cause starvation, but only countries with relatively little trade. Russia without any cause starvation, Australia without starvation, the West.
Okay,
so actually you get
all right.
starvation.
The Irish one, okay, the Russian one is an example, all right? But the foundation of the model, if you perturbate the parameters, reverses the allocation, which is completely... so in other words, I can take the theoretical model by Ricardo, put second order effect, which is stochastic prices of those goods. They take the price of wine as unmoved. You stochasticize it. And of course the other thing is, no, I believe that it's an illustration of the disease, just like other, thing. Whether you trade, it may mitigate the effect a little, but it's still the fact that specializing in any good, whether you trade or not, okay, if you have a collapse of the value of that good, is very harmful, and it's not in the model. They stop at first order. Same thing with Professor Gigerenzer and I are enemies of something called portfolio optimization. We don't believe in optimization. Same disease. You allocate using Markowitz, you go to the cemetery. Even Mr. Markowitz himself, as was busted by Gerd, was busted. Even Markowitz himself doesn't use that model of optimization. So you take pretty much every form of optimization brings fragility.
So what should we do then with for example, here in Switzerland, we are hostile to, or not hostile, we are hostage to two big banks, and some other big corporations, but mostly the two big banks. What should we do as a society with these with these things?
You guys were doing very well. I worked for your two big banks indirectly. Once Credit Suisse, First Boston. I worked for First Boston in '87, and I worked for UBS. All right. And when I worked for your banks were intelligent. They were risk conscious. They were risk averse, stuff like that, and they were smaller, relatively. All right. Over time, your banks got big, international, arrogant, and of course prone to blow up. And needless to say, I mean, we don't need history to prove it. Okay. I mean, I don't need to invoke. It's in your mind what happened a couple of years ago, and it's still happening. All right. So no, big banks. Switzerland's strength was in the small banks managed by paranoid people who did not use financial derivative, and they had gray hair and hated anything they didn't understand. When I was a derivatives trader, they hated me in New York. They said it's too complicated. Anything that has an equation in it, we don't like. All right. Now and suddenly, by the time I went to UBS, it was completely different. They were in love with anything. PhD from an American university in economics, all this optimization, so everything. They did everything wrong when they stopped being Swiss. Mm-hmm. That's it. Everything wrong. And now you go back to higher gray hair, anything with equation, suspicious, okay? The way the traditional heuristic they had inherited for ages, okay, it was completely busted by equations, all right? Go back to these heuristics, and it was a apprenticeship model where you get the heuristic from generation to generation. We can steal back 40 seconds because he took 40 seconds from me. All right.
No. I know it's blinking here, but we have to talk about two things because I promised this to a couple of friends here. We need to talk about Via Negativa and Neomania. Okay,
they're the same. Via Negativa is very simple. How do you predict the future? Okay, I don't believe in prediction. Okay, because it's very hard to predict. It's the probabilistic methods and stuff. I want to build systems that are robust. But at the same time, when someone asks me to predict, I find it easy to predict some events. Easy to look into the future and can do it now. How do you do it? Very simple. You remove from the future everything fragile. It's called subtractive method. Okay, you take the future. Most people add flying motorcycles to the future, stuff like that. No, you take subtractive method. Subtractive, you remove from the future what's fragile. Okay, that's the first very simple heuristic that works beautifully. And another method to do it more effectively is the following. Anything, and Sornet is, you're not speaking, all right? He's a specialist of it. It's called Lindy effect. And the reason I came in honor of Benoit Mandelbrot to present that Lindy effect. Take that rule. It sort of works. If I see a young person and an old person, and I know nothing about him, okay, and I'm an insurance executive, I would say that the young person has a longer to live than the old person. You agree? Okay. When it comes to non-perishable items, it's the opposite. If you go to the bookstore, look at the copyright of the book. A book that's 10 years old has about 10 years, at least 10 years to live. A book that's 30 years old, things that are not perishable have opposite attributes. Technology has opposite attributes.
So a book that is 50 years old has about 50 years life in it.
But it's
roughly.
Exactly like life insurance. Like life insurance. Life insurance, if someone's dying of cancer and is 22, definitely doesn't have the life expectancy of someone who's 80 and healthy. You get the idea.
But that cello will probably do another 300 years.
Not a physical cello. As the non-perishable, in other words, the idea. An idea doesn't, a book is not perishable. A human is perishable. Your genes are not perishable, you see. An institution is an idea. The building is perishable, you see. So this applies to things that are not perishable, like ideas, theories, music, for example, music pieces, stuff like that. See, things that are cultural, phenomena, or economic. Take corporation, it's the same. A corporation is not perishable, or at least, not that.
No, they all go bankrupt eventually.
Yeah, but those that have lasted long are likely to last long.
Okay.
And if you see those that go bust, unless they mutate, okay? So this is quite important in forecasting. So if someone told me, how do you forecast? It's very simple. The chair, okay, this what you have here is, actually, we're using it the right way because not meant to sit down for food. It was a pharaonic throne, all right? The glass, all right, is a Phoenician. So what you have here is a kitchen from Pompeii, 2,000-year-old kitchen. It doesn't look too different from the kitchen you have. But you ask someone 50 years ago to imagine a kitchen in 2012, and they would think of something that looks like a flying, like the inside of a flying saucer or something like that. No? Okay. So you realize we are, the bicycles, 150 years old, today are growing faster, including China, than cars. The car hasn't changed much in 100 years. The Concorde came and went. If you take technologies that we use, once in a while you have a breakthrough like the computer, but technologies are, if anything, we're producing old goods in a cheaper manner. That's it.
Last question,
yeah.
And then we need to go on. Back to the state of the economy. In how deep shit are we?
Well, okay. Look at this graph here. Now, you know how I went to the IMF? I sent them this, all right? I sent them a paper. I wrote a paper, okay? And I sent it to someone there because what happened was they contacted me to talk tail events. I told them, listen, there's a way to measure exposure to tail events, to the unseen. See how concave you are to a variable, to interest rate, to this, to that. Nobody had thought about it. Mm-hmm. So they're starting to apply it. Now they may apply it to banks, all right? But it looks like, from what we see, from public domain information, not information from the banks, things are a lot worse
today than 2008.
Well, no, things are worse than we think. And of course, the world is worse today because we're transferring, debt causes this, we're transferring debt from the private to the public. So, except for you guys, we'll benefit, of course. But the world is not in a great shape. People don't quite understand the core of the problem. And the bankers in America had their best bonus year last year. Okay, so what? They make money. Look at the antifragility. They make money, they have bonuses. They lose money, we pay for it. So I can do that anytime, So the moral hazard argument has not been removed. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is antifragility is property of systems. A recession is good. Okay, let me show you here. My graph, the graph I like the most is this graph. What you have up top is a natural system with noise and volatility, okay? And volatility is stabilizing, as you see with your fellow, and there are a lot of arguments in the physical world. Probably the best person for that is Didier Sornet, who will explain. Injecting volatility in a lot of systems stabilizes them. However, if you constrain volatility, as Greenspan did, or as the Labour guy in London, what's his name? Gordon Schmorden, all right? These guys, they wanted to eliminate the seasons, okay? They would eliminate the seasons if they could, all right? You constrain volatility, you get big collapses. It's sort of like when you constrain forest fires. No forest fire, no forest fire. The big one is horrible, okay? So we have this fear of volatility as human that makes us make mistakes, okay? So what they've done, normally a recession is good because, like evolution, it kills, and makes new people, it's anti-fragile, new people come up. You see, we stifle that. In economic policy, we stifle that. If you're doing the right thing in 2009, you're penalized. For example, the government gave money to those who bought the wrong car. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you got a subsidy if you're in the wrong business. Okay, if you're in the right business, you don't get a subsidy. So it is going killing the anti-fragile and stabilizing artificially the fragile. Mm-hmm. There are businesses that do well, and cyclicality is there to help these businesses start to exist. Mm-hmm. So you have shifts like the seasons.
Well, great. Our time is up.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Nassim, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Nassim's book will come out.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Nassim. You get the chocolate.